I love that. How do you think that your faith plays into that?
I believe that first off, I believe that my faith plays integrally into that. And this is a bit deep, but I'll say that the entire battle that we're facing on the political stage today goes all the way back to the book of Genesis
Amen.
at the Tower of Babel. And it was at that time that God, seeing man was becoming so, proud, that he busted the tower up and sent them out, other nations with different languages and different tongues, and made us differently. That's God's plan. And
Hmm.
so, but what we see now is an American nationalism. In other words, America First, the America First movement, which Trump is the head of, which is undergirded by the United States Constitution, versus globalism or secular globalism, one world government globalism, which is undergirded by something called secular humanism. And so the entire battle is over there. When you look, take for example, the whole immigration thing, the Democrats want to just open borders and bring people in without any regard to any type of citizenship test or going through the naturalization processes the Constitution requires, because they want globalism. It will bring down and weaken the United States. And from that, we've had more people dying in 1 year from fentanyl. And, the Vietnam War lasted for 10 years, a little bit before your time, but you've heard of it, of course. We lost 58,000 Americans in 10 years in Vietnam. We lost more than that in 1 year under from fentanyl alone, as a result of open borders. So, to your question, how does faith play? There's one sovereign God. In the American
Hmm.
Revolution, there was a battle cry, no king but Jesus. The Democrats have these no kings day, but me, I've got a king, his name is Jesus, but he puts governments into place on earth. And you can go to
Romans
and
13.
see some of the legitimate roles of government. Um, and when you stop and think also, when Jesus looked at the Roman centurion and he was asking, Roman centurion comes to Jesus, he says, "Hey, will you heal my son? I see you heal these people." And Jesus starts to go to him, and the centurion says, "No, sir, you don't need to go. My men under my authority do what I say based upon my command. All you got to do is command it, and it'll be done." And Jesus said, "It is done." And then he says, "Never have I seen this type of faith in all of Israel." Well, Jesus was talking about a Roman military officer, so our faith is putting him first. He is in
Hmm.
control of everything. Our government, our constitution was based on biblical principles. And you ask, how is that? Well, you see, when I go back a moment ago, you have humanism on one side and you have American nationalism, America First on the other side. The humanist philosophy, which is undergirded by something called the Humanist Manifesto, is that man is inherent. When I say man, I mean mankind is inherently good. That we can migrate ourselves toward perfection. But a biblical worldview, under which the Constitution is built on a biblical worldview,
Hmm.
understanding that mankind, we are sinful. You know, Jeremiah says that the heart is sinful above all things. Who can understand it? And Romans, there's not one righteous, no, not one, other than through Jesus Christ. So the entire Constitution, because it is built on checks and balances, because the founders understood that men are inherently evil, and therefore these checks and balances are designed to check that evil. So I would say my faith is integrated entirely into my political beliefs. I know who's sovereign, and I know that the United States Constitution is a gift given from the sovereign God. And, it's like Benjamin Franklin said to the little old lady on the day that they passed it, September 17th, 1787, "What are you giving us, ma'am?" And he says, "A republic." "What are you giving us, sir?" Excuse me. He says, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." So I'm committed to trying to keep it. I've sworn to keep it. As a military officer, I've made a note to give my life for it and would still do that. And so but my faith is at the very central core of everything, including, for example, life. Somebody said, "Are you pro-life?" 100%. I said, "I'm 1,000% pro-life." And babies in the womb. Jeremiah said, "I knew you before when you were in your mother's womb." And so, babies in the womb in every scenario are to be given full constitutional rights. And if you think about this, for example, if you look at unborn babies in what we call the intestate succession, the law of intestacy, in other words, that means inheritance. So, for example, if a baby is conceived on day one and the father is killed on day two, that baby is still entitled under intestate succession to inherit. So the baby's rights go to the date moment of conception there. Or if the baby is in a mom's womb and they get into a car accident and the baby is born without a limb, that baby is entitled to recover for personal injuries. In the abortion scenario, they've just thrown that in the trash can. You've got to have individual rights. And these rights, by the way, when you look at the notion of natural law, our founding fathers believed in natural law. And it came largely from John Locke. We have John Locke and Montesquieu and Blackstone, who are the three philosophers on which the nation, our founders drew upon in the Declaration, the Constitution. But natural law is law which comes from God alone. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They're endowed by their creator. Hear that? This is Jefferson, with certain unalienable rights. And among these are the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that is natural law. And so I believe in natural law. Your right to speak is given by God. Your right to raise children, if you have children, is given by God. Your right to marry is given by God, not by the state. So my faith plays 1,000% into my involvement in political arena. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, get mad, say the wrong thing like everybody else. But at the center of the core is my faith in Jesus Christ.
I love that. I love when we can have conversations about how the creator is interwoven into every aspect of our lives, because he is.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I got chills. I never knew about that with the war cry. That's so interesting. I never knew about that.
What did you say?
I
Oh,
never
no,
heard
right.
about the war cry.
We have no king but Jesus. Exactly.
I
And
love
that's
that.
goosebumps when I think about it, and I think that's what we say now. We have a president, we have a constitution, but we have no king but Jesus, and he is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So that
Amen.
overall. So